Hi everyone. I thought I'd treat you to an extract from my book, Behind the Man, that I've recently published. You can get a copy on Amazon or on my link in the bio that will take you to the shop. I've left the British Army and I've been accepted into West Midlands Police. Here goes, this is that part of my story. In December 1991, I joined the West Midlands Police. Having waded through some administrative paperwork, we were taken to stores to collect our uniform and equipment. We were quite a large intake, and from my initial assessment, from a diverse range of backgrounds. There weren't many ex-forces recruits, and for the first time ever, I was working with women too. Everyone seemed friendly and excited to be in the police. It was viewed as a good job that had good prospects, and the pay wasn't bad either. That said, initially I took a pay drop, as I was well paid in the army due to my rank and other qualifications. I was very comfortable in the company of the people on my intake. It wasn't as thuggish or as hard hitting as the army. I was really interested in other people's stories of how they came to be at this place in their life. All were local to the West Midlands area, and some had families. Others were single, but most of us were in our 20s or 30s. I was very conscious not to give away too much of myself too soon. There were others, though, that were quite extroverted and wanted a lot of the airspace. I was happy for that, as I was taking it all in, building a profile in my head of every individual. And I'm sure some were probably doing the same with me. Having received all of our kit, we were required to wear it every day we attended Tally Ho Police Training Centre. We had all sorts of induction training before being sent off to Police College at Ryton-on-Dunsmore. Emma, my wife, and I had moved into our small 2-bedroom townhouse on Walmley Road. The previous owner, incidentally, was a policewoman. All our furniture fitted nicely into our home, and Em and I set out to make it our home by getting some friends to help us decorate. Before long, I was at Ryton for the week, returning home at the weekends. We were members of St John's Church, and thankfully, Emma had friends from church as well as family close by. I was immersed in learning my new job and wanting to excel in classes that we attended. On arrival at Ryton, we met our instructors, who were all sergeants, one of whom would become a dear friend of mine. We were introduced to each other in class for the first time. Some I had met at Tally Ho prior to Ryton. We had to do the usual of saying a little bit about ourselves by way of an introduction, as well as sharing our needs, fears, and expectations. Some fully embraced this and shared their hearts on the first day. I cringed inside, thinking that this was too much too soon. I couldn't believe how emotional some of them were, and I wanted to burst out laughing, but thought better of it. The police was quite mushy and cuddly compared to the army, where you were discouraged from sitting in a circle and sharing your feelings. I was used to just being told to crack on, so this was all very amusing. I didn't want to appear that I wasn't engaging in the exercise, so I gave just enough and nodded considerately whenever someone shared something special to them. Don't get me wrong, if someone shared how, say, a bereavement or traumatic situation had affected them, I'd respect that. But there was some stuff that was shared that was quite wet and, in my view, wasn't for the group consumption. I liked having classes with both genders. I got on well with the girls and got used to them bringing something different to the table in terms of perspective. I would learn how important that different perspective was as I journeyed through my police career. Whilst in class, we were encouraged to volunteer for certain roles that meant some responsibility. For example, a volunteer to march the class around the site. All students were required to march around camp either as a squad or as an individual. I was quite comfortable organising a team of people and marching them around camp, but at this early stage, I kept my counsel and allowed a guy called Tom to volunteer. He was quite a loud character and had shared with the class that he had military experience from his time in the Territorial Army. There was another ex-army guy in our class called Jason. We glanced at each other and smirked, looking down. The TA, or Territorial Army volunteers, were known as stabs. And when I was a regular soldier, stabs stood for stupid TA bastards. They were the weekend warriors that trained as soldiers on the weekends and during the holiday periods. To be fair, they should be commended for giving their own time and ultimately, if called upon, to serve their country in a time of war. So Tom got the job, and once the class was concluded for the morning, had the onerous task of marching us to the dinner hall. We formed up eventually, as the majority of our class had never marched before. The term form up in 3 ranks was alien to most, so I didn't envy Tom, and I was curious to see how this was going to pan out. It was really embarrassing, particularly if people are out of step or talking whilst they are marching. Just the basics of stepping off on your left foot and swinging your arms shoulder high. We would be getting drill instruction formally, so for now, I guess anything would do. We formed up and Tom shouted, "By the left, quick march, left, left, leftity, leftity, left." What followed was like an act from the Fred Karno circus. There were some people hopping and some skipping. I tried to keep the step regardless, but knew that it was going to the rats. We halted, bumbling into each other, and some started to blame Tom, who tried to respond, but the consensus was that we should have a new drill leader, and I was elected on the spot and graciously accepted, as I didn't want to be subject to an embarrassing episode like that ever again.